Hello and welcome to this very first edition of UNI Talks, coming to you from KMTV studios at the University of Kent in Medway. I'm Henry Sandercock and today we're going to be talking about the Olympics. With the clock ticking before Rio 2016 kicks off, we'll discuss whether London 2012 delivered its Olympic legacy of inspiring a generation. Joining me in the studio are Professor Samuele Marcora and Dr. Sakis Pappous from the University of Kent School of Sport and Exercise Sciences to chat to us about the science behind the Games. So thank you so much for joining us, chaps. I'll come to you first, Professor Sam. So one of the taglines of London 2012, part of the legacy, was that it would inspire a generation. And your research, it looks at motivation behind sports. So do you think that motivation in sports, did you think it did that?
Well, Sakis can tell you about the data, whether it did or not, but it's certainly sport and the Olympic Games are a great opportunity to motivate people, not just to do sport, but also to be physically active enough to be healthy. Because the messages from government to be more physically active regards things like preventing your cardiovascular disease in 20 years' time. This kind of messages are very important. However, from a motivation point of view, they're not very motivational because people discount the value of these rewards from doing regular exercise. On the contrary, sport can give you an immediate reward because hopefully you enjoy playing and also it's a social activity. So it's in that respect, because give you a reward immediately, it's much more motivational and therefore can also help you to be physically active for your health later on.
So Dr. Sakis then, what has the data been saying along these lines?
Since 2012 I have been supervising dissertation students who focus exactly on the topic of your question, trying to explore whether the London 2012 Olympic Games have had an influence on grassroots participation. Overall, the people that we interviewed sports managers around Kent, they told us that indeed there were a lot of people who got enthusiastic about sport, so there were more new clients knocking on the door, and that's good news. The bad news is that some of the managers that we interviewed told us that the clubs were not very prepared to respond to this increased demand. So a lot of people came in, there was a big impact. Now, if this is going to be a sustainable legacy or not, it's still a topic that we need to research. It seems that a lot of people, new people, started doing sport, but they didn't sustain this level. What is true also is that sports that were not very popular before, such as female boxing, for example, we had the first and historic Olympic medal with the first female UK athlete winning a medal. Adams received a lot of positive coverage, and this brought new girls into a sport discipline that was not very popular before. So especially the sports that they achieve some success, Olympic medals, this was translated to increase participation.
So for you then, is the thing that makes the Olympics so special that part of the legacy, or is there something else you think that makes it such a special occasion?
Basically, it was the first time in history that an organizing committee of the Olympic Games did this promise to use the Olympic Games to increase participation. And we have to give credit to that. No other country has tried to use the enthusiasm of the Olympic Games to increase sport participation. So in this case, it was a very unique to London 2012. At the same time, it is quite it's difficult to influence behavior of one individual person. So imagine how difficult it is to transform the habits of the whole nation. For me, the Olympic Games is not just about increasing participation, but it's the whole festival effect that makes it unique. It's the biggest international event that happens every 4 years' time.
And Professor Sam, I'll throw that over to you as well. What makes the Olympics such a special occasion?
Yeah, apart from obviously, the Olympics themselves, for me, the special occasion is that I'm able to watch on TV very high-level competition in sports that you don't not normally watch. For example, I'm passionate about Olympic weightlifting or water polo. When do you see this kind of sports on telly apart from the Olympics? So for me, it's a special occasion because I can see something new and enjoy that.
So along those lines, then, which athletes perhaps are you going to be looking out for in those disciplines?
Well, unfortunately, like in weightlifting, Italy is not great. Also, Britain is not. So I actually more for the Greek team as a very good weightlifter, and I cannot cheer for them. But other unusual sports are water polo, for example, and Italy is quite good, or male volleyball. So those are the two that I follow with particular keen interest. But of course, the most exciting for me, and I guess for most people, is the final of the 100 meters, and I really look forward to see how both will do.
And Dr. Sakis, what's your event, shall I say?
I was an elite athlete myself. Also, when I was younger, I was a fencer. So I was a member of the Greek national team, and since then I really have a big interest in fencing. It's one of those sports that we haven't got the opportunity to see a lot on the television, and fencing is really a very nice sport, but you need this specific knowledge to understand what is going on. So I've got some people that I know that are going to participate, and this is going to be basically the sport that I'm interested in most. But track and fields is the king of sports when it comes to Olympic Games. So all track and fields disciplines is going to be of great interest for me.
So you've both mentioned some niche sports that you'll be following. Sports England recently published some statistics showing that participation in sport has actually dropped slightly in the the sports on the edge of the main sporting spectrum. So what do you attribute this to, and what do you think can be done about it?
But difficult. It's not my research, so it's difficult. I'm just giving you some sort of my opinion, which is not very well informed. But I think that in order to get medals, and that's, the UK has been extremely effective in doing that. They turn around the medal league table in 2 or 3 Olympic Games from quite poor to be one of the world powers at the Olympics, and they did that by focusing their support, which included a lot of sports science, into sports where there is a good opportunity, a good chance of success. And I guess that may favor some sports compared to others. And also I think the problem with the niche sports, you have a lot of exposure, people get enthusiastic about them, but only a month of the Olympics, not even that. And after that, you don't see it sustained over time. So I guess maybe to have a bit more different sports on TV would be nice.
And Dr. Sakis, do you concur with what Professor Sam's just said?
Yes, I do. I would just add the element of education and physical education in schools. I think that's very crucial. Make sure that young people get enough, sufficient hours of physical education at school. Well, if you see that most of the people who are active in sport when they are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, those people, they were quite active and very sportive and athletic when they were young. So building these positive experiences in their childhood, it is important in order to later on continue this habit. It's quite difficult to convince someone who has never done sport when he or she was a kid to start up doing it later in life. So trying to build the enthusiasm about sport when at a younger stage, it's crucial. If you see, for example, what Scandinavian countries are doing, Scandinavian countries are not very successful in terms of winning medals if you compare with other countries, but they rank very high in terms of the level of physical activity of population. So one thing is grassroots sport for all, and another thing is success in terms of medals. And a lot of in the past, politicians, they were making this wrong equation that having more medals is going to necessarily translate into more people being active in sport, and that's not the case, as my colleague already said. So
we'll move on to the athlete side of things, the more sciencey question, shall I say. So this Olympics has been surrounded by some fears over the Zika virus. There's some problems with the accommodation, and I think some construction projects are a bit behind. Dr. Sakis, you were there recently. What do you think the mood is there, and do you think that that's going to affect athletes' performance?
Talking about Zika, for example, I spent 6 months in Brazil this year. I was on a sabbatical there doing some research about the forthcoming Paralympic Games. The overall idea and the feeling of my Brazilian colleagues when I was talking about Zika is that it is over-exaggerated, the concern. And there has been a study published recently from the Yale School of Public Health saying that indeed the risk is not as high as it has been portrayed in media. So just using a normal repellent, try to avoid mosquito bites is enough. But I remember I gave a lecture in Rio a month ago, and the students, they start asking me, what is this whole hysteria, all this buzz about Zika? So they do not share this kind of concern. It seems that it is a little bit exaggerated.
And I was there for a week, Belo Horizonte, helping the British consulate. That's where the British Olympic team trains during the Olympics, and I haven't seen any mosquito actually in a week. So, but you were mentioning doping. I think that's clearly, with all this stuff going on with Russia, etc., that I think if there is a big risk for the Olympic Games, even more than the corruption of the politicians and managers involved in managing the Olympics, all these kind of things have been discussed, is doping. Because I think there is a risk here that the very concept of the Olympics may kind of disappear. And maybe has already disappeared, that's why there is so much doping. So I think we really need a grown-up debate about doping, including debating and considering, instead of completely ignoring the possibility that some sort of controlled doping under medical supervision may actually be a possible solution. Not a lot of people in the media discuss that, so I'd like to take the opportunity.
And Professor Sam, I mean, what does all these allegations about doping, Zika, construction problems, what does this all do to an athlete's mentality?
Yeah, especially those athletes, for example, I'm thinking, my research is on mental fatigue and the effects of mental fatigue on physical performance, poor performance. And one of the most fatiguing activities that the brain can do is controlling emotions. So I'm thinking about elite athletes. Some of them may be either fearful to be caught if they are doping themselves, or the ones that are already still waiting to know whether they may be competing or not. So imagine the emotional stress that are going under, in addition to the normal stress of being an elite athlete at the most important event of one of the most important events of your career. So I think all this can really have an indirect effect. All this kind of psychological stress can have an indirect effect on their performance on the field, on the track, on the swimming pool. Because we found that mental fatigue is as damaging to performance as muscle fatigue. So yes, it's important to reduce the stress as much as possible before competition.
Okay, well that's all we've got time for, so thank you very much both for coming in. That's it from us for now. Keep an eye out for the next episode of Uni Talks, where we will discuss current issues with researchers and academics at the University of Kent. In the meantime, you can read up on the latest from the Centre for Journalism on our website, or by following our Twitter account at CFJ Kent. See you soon.